Thanks for joining for this episode of the TechSpective podcast. I have with me Art. And Art, I didn't ask you beforehand. I'm not even going to make an attempt at your last name, so I'm going to let you do it. But I have Art from Britive.
Artyom Poghosyan. Thank you, Tony. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. I guess give me a little bit of background on yourself. You're like, how did you get here? And then a little bit on Britive.
Happy to, yeah. So I have spent the last over 2 decades in the cybersecurity space, and identity and access management is the primary sort of segment where I've spent most of my past couple of decades. I have built a company before Britive called Advanced Technology Solutions, also in the identities space, which was acquired in 2016 by Optiv Security, which led to me and my co-founders starting Britive. And the idea and the vision behind Britive was to reimagine the identity and access management and build something that would meet the needs of the world that we were moving towards with public cloud adoption, new technologies, and now AI adoption, and really be able to address the new challenges and the needs that the organizations are facing as they're adopting new technologies. So that's what we've started, with in the Britive journey. It's been very exciting so far. We're seeing great opportunities, and would love to dive a little bit more into what we're learning and what we're seeing ahead of us.
Well, let's do that. Let's dive. So, anyone who follows the website or has listened to any 2 or more of these podcasts this year knows that pretty much every conversation has come back to agentic AI this year. Like last year it was all generative AI. This year it's all agentic AI, and I've talked about it from a variety of angles in terms of what's possible with AI agents versus what's the security risk you expose yourself to with AI agents versus how do we use AI agents to help us with the risks of the AI agents, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I would open it up to you then to give me your kind of perspective on like how does that all fit into your world?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Tony, I couldn't agree more. There's a lot of attention, a lot of discussions about AI technologies, Gen AI, as you said. Gen AI started a couple of years ago, and now Agentic AI has been the big topic this year. So if I take a step back for a moment and look at what we're seeing in the market, what we're observing, it is the endless sort of the movement towards innovation and new technologies to improve the businesses, to introduce new products in the market, and just it's never going to stop. And it is exciting to be continuously innovating, but it does come with its own set of challenges. And again, what I said earlier, right? So this was our vision when we were starting Britive, to really be able to see what's coming and from the technology innovation standpoint, and be able to bring the businesses onto that journey where they are able to adopt new technologies quickly and benefit from new technologies, and while they are becoming more and more secure and doing this safely. Because otherwise it becomes a major risk for organizations, both from security standpoint, but also arguably operational risk, right? Especially so for this very high velocity and high volume type of technologies that AI and agentic AI bring to the market. So now specifically about those technologies, I think what's really similar, but also different, I'll address this similar part of it, is when we saw cloud adoption, cloud infrastructure adoption, we saw very different type of technologies where you had, concepts like ephemeral workloads. Things would come up and go down in a matter of minutes. It was not like the hardware, boxes that were stacked in the data center. Things were very different with these new technologies. Therefore, processes have to be different. Their tooling and people skills had to be different to be able to manage and operate those technologies. We're seeing a very similar pattern with agentic technologies. And the similar, but also different, because now we're trusting these technologies to reason, to make decisions on their own, act on our behalf, which becomes a little bit kind of interesting to watch, and how we as humans are going to start sort of transitioning a lot of the critical decision making to AI, to agentic AI, and how do we build trust in those technologies to actually trust them to make the right decisions? They can make decisions, but can they make the right decisions and do it consistently and not cause any negative impact? That's where we are. I think this is the biggest challenge in every business that is considering adopting these technologies, is trying to understand how we cross that chasm of the trust in those technologies.
Okay. Well, and I think, identity and access management is, really, I think, one of the primary challenges when it comes to agentic AI. And on the one hand, we've been having this conversation for years. Before generative AI and agentic, before we were talking all agentic AI all the time, just from an identity and access management perspective, even though we tend to focus a lot of that conversation around users and passwords and multi-factor authentication, the reality that I think a lot of people are barely aware of is that most of the identity and access management going on is beneath that. Like, the users are the tip of the pyramid, but there's machine to machine and application to machine and service to machine and application to service, and so all of these things have an identity, and they all have access rights and things that they're allowed to do and things they shouldn't be allowed to do. Now we are kind of doing that on steroids with agentic AI, and saying, and one of the things that we've addressed on this podcast a few times recently is that, generally speaking, there's a line. Users are over here and technology is over here. The users use the technology. Agentic AI blurs that line because it's a technology that acts as a user. So it's like it's somewhere in the middle there. It's not just an application I'm deploying. It's also not a user, technically speaking, but we need to treat it as such. We have to, we have to monitor its activities and restrict its access rights as if it's a user.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you nailed it, Tony. It is why it's so special and so different and also so challenging at the moment to address. I want to touch on something about the identity that the concept of identity that you mentioned a couple of times, and it is very important to really address that identity, the concept of identity in light of the current reality. I think for over 2 decades that I've been in this space, most of that time, identity has been sort of in a silo, in kind of a little bit of a world of its own, separate from a lot of the security technologies. But it has changed very quickly over the past, I'd say, probably 4 or 5 years, and we saw a quick sort of a trend to bring identity into the overall security architecture and paradigm of security controls, especially because of cloud, public cloud. So today it is a reality, and identity has become the cornerstone of modern security architecture. Now, let's unpack identity a little bit. And the whole definition of identity has evolved quite a bit. We used to refer to identity, the entities that come from our HR system, people who were getting paycheck or their contractors or whatnot, right? Those were the entities we're referring to in the past couple of decades. But you rightly pointed out, we should treat things, not just humans, things as identities when they have the attributes of a human user. Now, agentic AI has many of these attributes. Agentic AI is, on one hand, it's software, but on the other hand, in order for it to autonomously perform tasks on behalf of the human, it requires access to a Snowflake data lake or a Salesforce, platform, and so on, right? So those are things that we would normally expect a human to have access to, but now it is the agentic AI that needs to have access to. And at the same time, all these other questions about observability and monitoring and auditing of these activities and securing the whole process becomes relevant for the agentic identities. So yes, the concept of identity is much broader now. That includes agentic technologies, and they come with their own sort of challenges, because we're still talking about a non-human entity. We can't make them, sign on with two-factor authentication like we are used to doing with humans, right?
Yeah. Well, that's always been sort of, I think, irony is not the right word, but one of the discrepancies I've had, and then the reason I've continued over the years to point out that the users are and the passwords are just the tip of the pyramid, and there's all this identity going on underneath, is that we do talk so much as an industry about, well, we really need multi-factor authentication, we really need two-factor authentication, we really need you to stop using the password, or Louvre if you happen to be an art museum in Paris. We need you to be more creative and complex with your passwords. And I'm like, okay, all of that's true.
Yeah.
And yet all of that doesn't actually address 99% of identity.
Indeed. Yeah. So we have to really kind of innovate and create new methods and new technologies to be able to secure these identities. And we're definitely seeing that. And Britive is one of the contributors to that innovation, I would say. Today we are at the front lines of new identity security technologies that we are building, and we're bringing to market to be able to secure these new type of identity entities. For example, one of those things is the concept of ephemeral access, the concept of non-perpetual, not standing access, like we've been used to.
Right, like just-in-time access is not an entirely new concept, but it is hard in practice.
Yeah, it is. It is hard in practice, because it's first and foremost, it's a change of mindset and change of paradigm. As humans, we're used to saying, like, I need access to do my job. Give me that access. And when it's given, it's there. It's there 24/7, whether we're on a vacation or we're actually actively working in front of the computer. So that became a very risky proposition with cloud, but now it's even much higher risk to assume that access for agentic technologies, because of the fact that if even one credential is compromised, the implications could be massive. So from our standpoint, from Britive's standpoint, we have approached it differently. We've built capabilities to be able to provide access just in time, or some companies call it access on demand. But that access on demand is not perpetual. It always matches the time of that identity needs that access for. It could be minutes, it could be hours, and it automatically gets removed. And the big benefit from security standpoint is that standing exposure of credentials does not exist anymore. So we shrunk that time frame to only the time when that identity is using it. That, again, that's still something needs to be protected. For example, additional ways of validating who that identity is, checking the integrity of the agent to make sure that it is a trustworthy agent that we are going to give access to the data or applications, right? So it's more of a complete sort of features and capabilities to be able to fully secure those new type of identities.
Well, and some of those things, I don't think this has been widely adopted, but it was years ago I had a conversation with someone where we were talking about how often attackers target times when they know people won't be available. So like,
Yep.
Like there's a spike in ransomware around. Like this goes back a few years, but like we had major ransomware attacks, like going into Mother's Day weekend, going into like Independence Day weekend. It's like times when everyone's focused on something else, and people basically aren't at work. We've got the holidays coming up. People are gonna, companies are gonna be working on skeleton crews. Those are times that threat actors target. Well, if I'm an admin, and then I've been an admin, so like, if I'm the IT admin and I have this sort of like God level access to all this stuff on the network as a function of my job, okay, great, so be it. Tony's at work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. He should have access.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason for that access to exist at 10 p.m. Like, there might be an emergency, something might come up where I'm like, okay, well, no, wait, I do need to log in, I need to do something. And you can have a process for granting that just-in-time access or that on-demand access. But as a rule, that access shouldn't exist outside of business hours. Like, it should be automatically, deprecated when you're not supposed to be working, because then you limit your exposure for a threat actor to be able to use your credentials to do things.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. A few years ago, this would sound like a strange idea to not allow the admin have that access all the time because it's their job, right? But to your point, now that we've seen so many attacks and really much more sophisticated patterns of attacks, this makes a lot more sense, right? So I think we're definitely starting to see that shift, that organizations are asking the question differently. Tony, you're the admin of cloud or AWS infrastructure, but do you really need that access when you're on vacation or you took your break for Thanksgiving, for example, right? If no, we can make sure that access is at least temporarily locked until you come back, right? Or
Right.
if there's emergency that you have to you jump in and help with, right? So that becomes much more of like an acceptable new approach rather than just assuming you should always have that access.
Right. Like, as long as that exists, as long as there is a way that something comes up, it's 10 p.m. on a Saturday and I'm technically on vacation in Aruba, I should still be able to get that access and log in. There needs to be a process and a tool in place to allow that to happen. But in general, I shouldn't have that access just on by default while I'm on vacation in Aruba. And I think, to your point about kind of the sophistication of the attacks, not every, I think we sometimes put threat actors on a pedestal, like they're all some sort of like, James Bond, Mission Impossible level hackers, and most of them are not. Quite the opposite. But to the extent that some are using the tools that are available and using, putting AI to work on their behalf, it is easy to connect the dots on some of these things. I mean, there's a reason that the general rule for people is, well, don't post on Facebook publicly about how you're going to be out of town for a week. Like that's not information you necessarily want the whole world to know, that you're not going to be home for a week. that's how crime happens. and
Yep.
Similarly, we have a different rule set for out of office messages in an email. Like you can have like, okay, well, if it's someone in my company, tell them this. If it's something out of my company, tell them this, because you don't necessarily want everyone to know when, how long you're going to be out or whatever. That's not something you want auto responded to the world. And to take that a step further now, if I have these AI tools, and there's so many breaches out there that let me connect the dots on Art. I can find all of Art's social media accounts. I can find and track these things and connect the dots together to be able to say, okay, well, now I know basically when Art is working. I know Art's going on vacation. And now I can use these credentials. So I think it does change the game some for the threat actors who know how to use the tools effectively.
It does. And I agree with you that it's not always that the most sophisticated attacks are behind some of the major, massive breaches. It's often, sadly, is just a simple, VPN credential that was there, nobody was using, and just, just
Right. Colonial
poor
Pipeline.
hygiene, right? Poor hygiene.
Right. I mean, Colonial Pipeline came down to unused VPN credential. I mean, how many breaches have come down to just someone didn't set a password on an S3 bucket? It's like it's so yes, it's sexy to talk about 0 days and Uber threat actors who are hacking at a level that we can't keep up with. And again, I'm sure those people exist in the world, but most attacks are not that. Most attacks are just simple user error, more or less.
Yeah, and your other point about now that AI is available to everyone, including the bad actors, it makes their job easier. It can process things a lot faster, and it makes us more vulnerable when the attackers are going to leverage new technologies and find these vulnerabilities even faster. Now, on the flip side, though, I think it goes both ways, right? I think we do have the opportunity to also use AI and use new technologies to
right.
Get our defenses up a little bit more, and where we could also, to your point, the other point earlier, that we can leverage technologies like the zero standing just-in-time access technologies to be able to proactively eliminate those vulnerabilities, proactively expire these tokens, or remove the VPN credentials that could be an entry point. The challenge there, the big challenge there is we have the new set of modern technologies like cloud technologies that are API first, and they have much more modern capabilities for integration and security. And we have the legacy world. We have the data center technologies. That's where we have these sort of blind spots and gaps that are kind of hard to address completely. And that's where I think organizations are really trying to find as many of these gaps as possible and address. But it is hard because the technologies that exist in the data center they've been there for the past 3-4 decades or more, and not all of these technologies have any level of modern capabilities, like mainframes, for example, how long they've been around. So how do we bring these modern security and identity security methods to those technologies? That's the real challenge here, that attackers will always go after the low-hanging fruit, and where they will find it is the question, really.
Yeah. Well, so this goes a little bit outside of the scope of IAM itself, but I feel like on some level, what I'm thinking about, or what we're talking about, it falls into like the traditional model of, say, red teaming, blue teaming, purple teaming, or whatever, where it's like, okay, well, let's try to think about if you're the threat actor, what are the dots that you would connect? How would you navigate through my network? And getting into like trying to get into the head of the threat actor proactively to figure out, okay, if I was the threat actor, what would I do so I can find the gaps and close them. I feel like AI, and now I'm putting AI on this pedestal, but like, when we use it to its fullest potential, I feel like it can really help with that. I feel like it has the potential to help with that. I don't know if we're really there, but I feel like where we have different tools now, you might have a red teaming tool, and an attack surface management tool, and a breach and attack simulation tool. Like, we have all these different categories of vendors out there. But you could have an AI where you just say, look, I need you to think like a threat actor. How would you navigate across my environment and help me find the holes so I can fix them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really kind of has to be looked at it from exactly that perspective, that from outside in, how do we look? Like from the security posture standpoint, how do we look, right? Where would be that easier entry point? And yeah, I think there's definitely new technologies that are being built to do, especially for AI, and we have to come back to this to the AI topic, right? Just by design, it is a key topic. Yeah. So AI technologies are being built to secure AI as well. AI red teaming, like, so these various AI posture management tools and so on that are really serving that purpose, trying to find the vulnerabilities that could be exploited by bad actors. I think the other thing is also to acknowledge is within the security tooling and processes, there are a lot of opportunities to leverage AI for operational purposes. For example, one that I'm hearing often from our customers is the concept of Agentic security operating center, SOC, and it is something that I think really from the value proposition standpoint, it has a very, very high value proposition, because with agentic AI technologies, it is possible to process volumes and volumes of logs and events and alerts and so on much more effectively than a human being has ever been able to process. So that does offer a great opportunity to accelerate and get to much more scalable model with agentic SOC technologies, eventually to get to preventative, security measures and much more effective detection measures, right? So yeah, we are working. I mean, the industry is working on those on those opportunities to really bring the kind of technologies to the customers to help them level the playing field a little bit, because attackers are actively going to use AI technologies.
Yeah, well, and some of it comes down to like a scope and scale thing. Like when we're talking about red teaming and stuff, like that's a thing that's existed for forever. I mean, just you can just hire a white hat hacker and say, I want you to try to break into my network, like that and that's purely a human trying to do things with the tools they have at their disposal. Where I feel like, and this is both a pro and a con. I mean, this works for us. It works for the good guys too. But one of the things that AI is uniquely good at is having access to all of the information at once and being able to process it all at once and connect the dots in a way that a human being can technically do, given enough time and being able to look at everything and say, okay, yes, I can see how this connects to that. But the AI, I think, can it can just do it at a speed that you can't possibly compete with.
Yep.
So for things like all of that's a very long-winded way of saying, like, given enough time, a human cybersecurity professional looking at, I'll just use Colonial Pipeline, looking at the Colonial Pipeline network, would have eventually stumbled on, hey, we've got these VPN accounts out there that probably shouldn't be there. Nobody's using them. It's just sitting there. Why does that exist? Given enough time and resources, that would have been discovered, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But if we put an AI tool on it, the AI tool doesn't have 9 to 5 workday. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't get overwhelmed by the amount of information being thrown at it. So it can connect those dots a lot faster and just go, hey, you've got these VPN accounts. Why are they there? That's just an example where I feel like, there are, going back to what we said at the beginning, how like so many of the successful attacks that make headlines have not been a function of nation state level Uber hacking. They've been a function of configuration errors and human error, and simple things that if we followed basic security hygiene practices would not have happened. And those are things that I think when we employ AI for defense, it can hopefully help us find those things faster and proactively and address them before they're exploited.
Yes. I mean, that's a great example where, AI can process things faster and at a much larger scale than it's humanly possible. I think I wanted to sort of make a slight pivot towards in that model, we also have to have a certain level of trust and a certain level of control built into the AI and agentic workflow and an agentic process of detecting vulnerabilities. The problem or the risk there is that if that's where we're moving towards, of course, attackers are going to target that. They're going to want to disrupt that logic that we're trying to now leverage AI to do the hard work that the humans have always been struggling with, right? So how do we protect that? How do we protect that layer of the new security and controls so that we can continue to trust that it's going to do the job? And I think that's where the today most of what I'm hearing and what I'm involved in discussions about is that, like, what kind of controls security mechanism can we introduce in the agentic AI workflows, especially when they are directly in the process of detective security, preventative security controls, and various sort of monitoring and alerting kind of workflows, right? That we have to trust that they will not be affected and compromised by the attackers to do the exact opposite of what they were designed to do. I mean, we've been spending years in training the human actors about security, right? What is the anti-phishing training, for example, or other type of security training that we have been doing for years. We have to have something similar for the agents. We have to be able to know that that agent that is handling a critical part of the security process won't be easily poisoned or be sort of compromised to act differently than we expected them to. And of course, overlay the human monitoring process on top of that.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I brought up recently the notion of that I expect in the next year we'll have a headline of a breach that occurred because the threat actor AI was able to basically jailbreak or hijack the defender AI and get it to do things. And now, granted, the pushback I got was, okay, well, why can't we flip that? Why can't that be the goal of the defending AI? Would be to hijack or jailbreak the attacking AI. I'm like, all right, well, fair.
AI versus AI,
this is the
right?
world we live in now. Is putting our AIs head to head.
Yep.
One of the things. So we've had this whole conversation, and we talking about agentic AI as agentic AI and its relationship to identity and access management as a monolith, as a general rule. But there are there are certain industries, healthcare, finance, government, that are more regulated, that have different rule sets in terms of like how information is shared or protected. That just as we have different rules from an IAM perspective for humans, I feel like we're going to have to address those challenges from an agentic perspective as well.
Yes. There's a whole host of like processes and controls that we have to adapt for the for these new type of actors, the AI actors. Yeah, I think it is the part where I don't hear enough about and how organizations are approaching that. I think today a lot of the focus is really kind of refining the core sort of functionality of the AI technology, agentic technology, and I think it's well, of course that's important, but I think it's just a little bit slower than I would like to see in terms of adapting the existing processes and existing controls and so on that will have to surround these technologies to make sure that they're production ready, make sure that they're ready to actually go and operate at the scale and the volume that will truly bring the benefit of leveraging those technologies. So I think there things are happening quickly, though. I'm seeing like regulatory requirements and so on, or standards at least getting published around those things, right? But it is so necessary. It's again that the trust gap that we have to close to be able to fully deploy these technologies.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue. I mean, I think I was going to come back to that because you mentioned the word trust at the beginning. That when it comes to agentic AI on any level, like at the consumer level, me using my iPhone or whatever, or the different, Perplexity browser and ChatGPT browser, like everyone is pushing agentic AI now,
Yep.
and they want people to be using it at some level, and and I've been saying like, okay, well, you're asking for a lot of trust here, when we talk about things like, having an AI agent that can act as sort of like your personal digital virtual assistant, where you say, oh, I want to go to this, I like this group and they're coming on tour, I want to go to this concert, and have the AI agent just automatically check your calendar, go find the tickets, buy the tickets, book you a hotel, all these things. It's like, yeah, that's great on some level, but you're asking me to trust an agent with access to do all of those things on my behalf, and that's a lot of trust. At a corporate level, that same thing exists. It's like, how much, like if we talk about like autonomous SOC, it's like, okay, well, how much trust do you have in this thing? And going back, like, there's a reason that like SOAR has never took off the way we thought it should. It's like, well, it requires a lot of hand-holding and it requires a lot of trust to be able to say, okay, I'm going to have this sort of automated process. When this happens, all of this is just going to happen. And it's like, okay, well, do I trust that will happen without taking my network down? And so so my personal perspective on this is that we'll get there, but it takes time where I give it a simple task. Let's try the agent out of this, and I say, okay, it did that fine. Now I trust it. I'll give it a little bit more. And I've been trying to come up with an analogy. That the only one I've come up with so far is kind of like when you're first learning to drive, and like the first time you're like stepping on the brakes, it's like, all right, you don't know if the car is going to stop or not, and like you've never driven. Eventually it becomes second nature, but everything about it in the beginning is very conscious and very small. I'm gonna adjust a little bit here. I'm gonna touch the pedal here. So you do little things until you get used to it, and then you say, okay, now I can just do this. And I feel like that's, we're at the early stages of that with Agentic AI. So as much as we talk about all of the great things it can potentially do, I feel like it hasn't earned that trust yet. Not from me, and I think not from a lot of organizations. It's like, we're going to deploy it. We'll try it out for some simple stuff. Let's just see if it can just, count the number of R's in the word strawberry accurately a few times, and then we can move on to whether or not it has access to calendars and payment systems.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I mean, it is definitely the old notion of crawl, walk, run, especially with AI, where the technology is capable of running from day one, but can you trust it to run? Because once something goes wrong, you can't stop it. I think that there is definitely understanding across the industry, and I think what is commonly happening that at least I'm seeing is this whole concept of the crawl stage with AI is very human driven, agent executed or agent performed, where there's this concept of human in the loop, that
Right.
is often the first architectural pattern where, the agentic workflow has certain sort of control steps in the process where if that moment is reached, an agentic action needs to be approved by a human before it can proceed. That's where the human steps in. Or if something happens, the human needs to be alerted and then act based on that. It's also part of it. So naturally we're already driving in that direction. I think it will take time. To your point, it will take time for us to fully understand the AI technology, the agentic technology, and yes, we all have to learn some new things, and we have to all become a little bit of like an AI scientist, a little bit, not a lot, but we have to understand how that technology works for us to be able to safely operate that. Like, to example, the car, we have to understand what happens when you hit the brake or what happens when you hit the gas, right? So these are basic things we have to understand about the technology, and then we can learn to better operate it. But yeah, it has to follow sort of that crawl, walk, run pattern.
Yeah, well, and going back to the concept of agentic AI fitting in the middle between being a technology and being a user, I think one of the other things that occurs to me, and I don't know if this is really the case, or I think different organizations may handle it differently, but like, it is attributing the agent to somebody. So for example, if you hire a team, you've got 5 people working for you on your team. Well, you can have check-ins, you assign them tasks, you expect them to go execute the tasks, and they check in with you, but ultimately you're still responsible. They're your team. That's kind of how I'm envisioning the agents. Like, well, I might create agents to do different tasks and perform different functions within my role and to help me do my job. But then, just as I would be responsible for humans on my team, I have to have some level of responsibility for those AI agents. And I'm not saying we go around and start firing people if their AI agent, does something wrong, but on some level I am. On some level I'm saying that there is a responsibility that if you're going to deploy AI agents, that you understand what you're deploying them to do, what access control you have in place, and that you're actually monitoring and making sure that they're performing the function you wanted them to perform and not doing things you didn't want them to do, just as you would with a human user.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is definitely one of the important parts of the the process controls that have to be adapted for these new types of technologies. And let's bring back the idea of identity here for a moment, because it applies exactly for the scenario you just described, right? So we have now these agents performing tasks either on behalf of a human user, or they're autonomous. It's a multi-agent system that is acting and operating with its own sort of mechanism of multi-agent interaction, agent to agent, and so on. I want to bring this analogy here, comparing to something that was very common, say about 15, 20 years ago. There was this concept of shared accounts in the infrastructure system. So you had 20 admins sharing one domain admin account on the Windows Active Directory domain, or the network device, admin account, right? Auditors were very unhappy about that situation, because it was very hard to understand who did what, in what, especially if there was some kind of an issue, who was responsible for that, right? So we've sort of moved away from that. We fixed some things, and now, at least from the legacy standpoint, we got to concepts of, all activities have to be traced back to someone or something that did it, right? I think we still have to figure out how that works for AI and agentic AI, because that's a very common scenario where you could have, 10 employees share an agent to do something. What that agent is going to require, one credential into that system or database. So who was responsible for directing the agent to do what it did if it caused a disruption? So very, very important part of this, how do we secure these environments? How do we bring those existing sort of concepts of control and monitoring and auditability and traceability to the agentic workflows? And fundamentally, we have to accept that there has to be some way of uniquely identifying these agents, like that concept of we should treat them like they're first-class citizens in the world of identities, right? So we can't just say, well, that's just another login we're going to assign to an AI agent, and it should work. Now we have to really raise the bar on how we design the process, and how we track, and how do we report, how do we audit these things, right? So those are some of the challenges that I think the industry is actively working on.
Okay. Well, so I don't know if you have more to add, but I was going to say, to kind of like wrap this up, my closing question is sort of like okay, well, what does that mean for the next generation of identity security? Like, what do we need to be able to keep pace with autonomous systems and AI driven, operations and stuff? Like, how do we address that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. So look, I think first and foremost, I say this a lot to my network, the peers and customers, and we have learned from the past couple of decades of identity and access management technologies, and implementing those. We've learned a lot, and a lot of that learning and the expertise applies. We just have to understand how these new use cases are different, and adapt to those. So, for example, one of the important things is the world of AI and agentic AI is going to be extremely dynamic, and it's going to be extremely difficult to rely on. After something happened, let's go investigate and find out what and how and who did what, right? That has to be sort of completely shifted, and yes, the detective control is going to be important, but we have to design more of these preventative or secure by design approach is more of that priority now when it comes to agentic technologies, which means every identity has to be fully verified every time an agent requires access to something. We cannot extend this sort of perpetual trust trust and verify becomes like every access request, every access to some data or infrastructure has to be fully verified, the integrity checked, and then processed. And when it's processed, it needs to be processed in a way that there's full visibility and control and how long that access is given. So that's back to the concept of zero just in time, but also zero standing access, and then the full auditability and traceability. And that's now we're in the detection and monitoring kind of territory of security. So yeah, we know a lot already about identities and what's required. But we also have to approach it with a little bit of a new way to secure the agentic technologies and AI.
All right. Well, let me thank you for taking the time to join me. It was a fun conversation. It is interesting. Like I said, I've had multiple episodes now where we're talking essentially about the same thing, but it is an evolving conversation, and I think it's also interesting to me as maybe one of the only people who actually listens to every podcast episode to be able to follow the different perspectives and kind of see how things are tracking. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, Tony, thank you for having me. I have watched your episodes, and you have some great guests and great topics, and you're doing a great job of really engaging, keep people in the discussions about these important topics. And I'm happy that I was able to share with you today a little bit of my perspective, and hopefully this be valuable for your audience.
Awesome. All right. Well, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.